Now we are going to discuss the graphical representation of Solow model. In the last class, we discussed the equation forms of steady growth path of the Solow model. This is the first figure or first graphical representation of Solow model. On the y-axis, we represent f of k, that is output per worker, and x-axis we represent k, that is capital per worker. The curve f of k represent output per worker, that is y by L or q, small q. The slope of the curve indicates diminishing returns. Means as we move towards the right, that is as k increases, the slope of the curve decreases. As we move towards the right, that is as k, small k increases, the slope of the curve decreases. So the slope of the curve indicates the diminishing returns. This is the just explanation for first. Again, the figure on the vertical axis, f of k, output per worker is given. On the horizontal axis or x-axis, small k, represents small k or capital per worker. The curve f of k represent output per worker or L by k, or we can represent, we already seen that L by k equal to small q. And the slope of the curve indicates diminishing returns. As we move towards the right, that is as k increases, the slope of the curve decreases, means diminishing returns. This is the second figure for Solow graphical representation. If you have a paper, please draw this on your paper. Here that for almost a 45-degree straight line represents nk. The protection function, that curve represents small s f of k. Intersection point is E, at point E. X-axis K0, K star, K1, K2, etc. K0, K star, K1, K2, etc. The figures are not much clear. The straight line is nk. The curve is s f of k, and intersection point is E. The points represented in the horizontal axis are K0, K star, K1, K2. Please draw it in your book or notebook or rough paper. Next, we will explain the explanation of that. I'm moving to the explanation part. In the figure 2, the straight line nk has a constant slope equal to n. The straight line nk has a constant slope that is equal to n. The slope is equal to n. The curve s f of k represents saving per worker. The curve s f of k represents savings per worker. It is just a displacement of f of k by a factor s. That curve is just a displacement of f of k by a factor s. It also represents the investment per worker, as it is assumed that savings equal to investment always. In our assumption, we already seen that saving will be always equal to investment. So this is represent investment per worker. The steady growth is indicated by the point of intersection, that is point E. The point of intersection of the curve SF of k and the straight line NK. That is the point of steady state growth, point E. The steady state growth is indicated by the point of intersection E of the curve SF of k and the straight line NK. At the point E, the rate of growth of capital per worker and the rate of growth of labor are same. At this intersection point or at the equilibrium point of point E, the rate of growth of capital per worker and the rate of growth of labor are same. At that point, output also grows at the same rate. Okay, at point E, rate of growth of capital per worker equal to rate of growth of labor and also equal to output. Output also grows the same rate. It is the steady state growth point where saving is just enough to keep capital per worker constant. That point E is the steady state growth point where saving is just enough to keep capital per worker constant. In other words, at the intersection, saving generates just the right amount of investment to stay on the balanced path. At the intersection point, saving generates just the right amount of investment to stay the balanced path. Saving a balance equilibrium point just equal ആയിരിക്കും ഇൻവെസ്റ്റ്മെന്റ്. ഇക്വിലിബ്രിയം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സ്റ്റഡി ഗ്രോത്ത് പാത്ത് അറ്റൈൻ ചെയ്യാൻ വേണ്ടി വരുന്ന ആ റേറ്റിന് വേണ്ടി വരേണ്ട ഇൻവെസ്റ്റ്മെന്റിന്റെ റേറ്റിന് ജസ്റ്റ് ഈക്വൽ ആയിരിക്കും സേവിങ്. It means that at this point, the actual amount of investment determined by saving is just the amount needed to keep the capital stock growing at the same rate as growth in labor supply. It means at the equilibrium point, the actual amount of investment determined by saving is just the amount needed to keep the capital stock growing at the same rate as the growth of labor supply. If the economy starts at the steady state point, it will stay there. The economy starts at the steady state point, it will stay there. That is the steady state growth equilibrium point, or that intersection point. And next, what happens if the economy starts at point to the left of the intersection point? Assume economy starts at the left of the intersection point. In the figure at point K0. We just explaining what happens if the economy starts at the point to the left of the intersection point. That is at K0 in our figure. Suppose it is at the point corresponding to K0, actual savings and investment. Actual savings and investment, S is equal to function of cap, will exceed the amount of capital required to maintain the growth rate of capital equal to growth rate of labor. ലേബറിന്റെയും ക്യാപിറ്റലിന്റെയും ഗ്രോത്ത് റേറ്റ് ഈക്വൽ ആക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി വരേണ്ട ക്യാപിറ്റലിന്റെ ഗ്രോത്ത് കൂടുതലായിരിക്കും. ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് ക്യാപിറ്റൽ ഈസ് ഹയർ ആണ്. Suppose it is at the point corresponding to K0, actual saving and investment will that is as a function of K, will exceed the amount of capital required to saving ആണ് higher ആയിരിക്കുന്നത്, capital നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് പോയി, will exceed the amount of capital required to maintain the growth rate of capital equal to the growth rate of labor. So according to this equation, growth rate of capital is positive. The first term on the left side, that is SF of K, is reached. Equilibrium തിരിച്ചെത്തും. If f of K is less than Nk, K and f of K will fall until the steady state point is reached. The situation refer to the point K1. If economy is at point K1, SF of K is less than Nk, so K and f of K will fall until the steady state point is reached. In the neoclassical model, there is a mechanism for restoring the economy to the steady state point. In the neoclassical model, there is a mechanism for restoring the economy to the steady state point. The main feature of this model is that steady state rate of growth is ultimately determined by the rate of growth of labor supply. It is an exogenous factor in this model. The main feature of this model is that the steady state rate of growth is ultimately determined by the rate of growth of labor supply. Rate of growth of labor supply we assumed as an exogenous factor. In the simple model, technology is also assumed to remain constant. Even if it is assumed to change, it does not change the structure of the model. It will only shift the production function curve, f of K curve, upward. Again, technology is an exogenous factor. In the Solow model, Solow assumes that, or Solow considered that technology is a constant. Actually, Solow leaves the technical progress as residual. So this technology in Solow's model is known as Solow residual. Actually, he considered this technology or technological progress is a manna from heaven. It's a manna from heaven. That is a gift whose sources is not well understood. Source എവിടെയാണെന്ന് നമുക്ക് ഐഡന്റിഫൈ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റില്ല. From where എവിടെന്നാ വരുന്നേ അറിയില്ല. It's a manna from heaven. Technology Solow considered as a residual or manna from heaven. And where these technical progress or technologies come from? If it is by innovation, then innovator cannot be rewarded as output is already exhausted by payments of capital and labor. That is Euler's theorem. No need to bother about these things, but just to consider Solow treated technology or technological progress as residual. If a theory rests upon exogenous factors for explaining growth, it cannot be of much use. It means the government policy does not matter at all in respect of economic growth. Another feature of this model is that any increase in saving can only bring about a temporary rise in the growth rate. Eventually, the economy will settle down on the point of steady state growth determined by labor growth rate. The only benefit is a permanent rise in the output per worker. But the growth rates in the old and now balanced growth path will be the same. The neoclassical growth theory implies the convergence of productivity growth rates in all the countries of the world. This is one of the extension of Solow's neoclassical model. He also expected or anticipated the convergence of the countries. If growth depends only on technology, and if technology is available to all, then less developed countries will catch up with the advanced countries in the long run. But recent empirical studies have not proved this conclusion. Actually, Solow's heart of this theory is a convergent hypothesis. It means less developed countries will catch up with the advanced countries in the long run. That we will explain in the next class. This is the Solow model. Convergence hypothesis we will explain in the next slides. Okay, thank you.